Episode 67 of the Auld Triangle is here. Andy Stevenson, Caoilte Barra, Ian O'Neill taking you through all the latest in Irish mixed martial arts news. Max Shelley joins us today after his big signing with Cage Warriors. Great to see that. We're looking forward to hearing from Max a little bit later on. Of course, hit the like button, subscribe button, give us an old 5-star rating on Spotify. That seems to be working. The numbers are the numbers are kind of jumping up a little bit on YouTube as well. So leave a comment if you like what you hear. If you don't like what you hear, all complaints to Andy Stevenson. He is our chief complaint handler here. And with Max's signing, I think it brings up a good topic of conversation here. With Conor McCarthy signing recently, Max Lally signing, both of those fighters being SBG affiliates with Cage Warriors. Positive signs looking ahead, and I think it's exactly what the promotion needs to get in fighters like this. And I for one am very excited to see Conor McCarthy get in there. Obviously, we spoke to Conor on the last episode. He was very disappointed that he couldn't get matched up. Max has made the announcement. We'll talk about it a little bit more in detail with him later on. Bantamweight division. He's coming into, and look, it makes for very exciting times ahead for Irish mixed martial arts. In what right now is a bit of a barren spell, not too much action going on. Obviously, we have a couple of fights to run through from Cage Warriors last weekend, Elite FC. We'll talk a little bit about PFL Europe later on, and a bit of action over at UAE Warriors too. But I think to round off and start off this podcast is a good conversation to kind of say, are we seeing a changing of the guard within this relationship between SBG affiliates and Cage Warriors? I mean, Andy, the signs are promising early days anyway, but nonetheless, there's still a bit of a ways to go. And I guess it beggars the question, are we going to see more of an influx of Irish fighters going in through the Cage Warriors ranks to try and get to the UFC? Are there other forms of routes? I mean, we're talking about PFL Europe and what that offers. We've seen a couple of Team KF fighters over at UAE Warriors, which can provide its own pathway towards the UFC. Might bring the overall question to what is the best route for an Irish mixed martial artist to get to the big stage and where they want to go. I mean, it's a loaded question. But, I mean, the recent signings of Max and Conor, two Cage Warriors, Andy, seems that there's a bit of a changing in the guard happening for SBG fighters signing with Cage Warriors. And I think overall that should be a good thing a positive thing that we could look at.
Ian, great to see you. Caoilte, great to see you. Good to be seeing you. Hello, everyone. Good to chat to you. All we are saying is give peace a chance. SBG and Cage Warriors are coming together. You can thank SevereMMA. You can thank the Auld Triangle. Do you know what? You can thank me as well. Graham Boylan first said that it's not, as far as he's concerned, SBG are welcome. They're welcome. SBG then said, John Kavanagh said, do you know what? I like the cut of that Graham Boylan's jib, and I'm willing to send my boys over there if the deal is right. He's chasing mortgages, as he should be for his fighters. And now we have Conor McCarthy, Max Lally are both SBG affiliates, and they're in Cage Warriors, and this is great. I think it's great for, on a serious note, all fucking about us.
I didn't know it. Andy, Jesus Christ. Talk about me off guard there, lad. What are we doing here?
It's, listen. Look, let's be fucking honest. There's not a whole lot happening in Irish MMA right now. It's a bit boring. There's fights on, of course, but there's no real big storylines right now that we're getting our teeth into. We need to talk about something. And this is a great news story at the moment, where I think it's a very, very positive step in the right direction for two lads fighting out of SBG Charlestown, SBG Nace, obviously cross-training in Dublin Combat Academy as well for Max Lally, but to be having an opportunity to fight on a promotion, regardless of which promotion it is, but to have the ability to make their own decision and have no roadblocks in place is brilliant. I think that this is a great step in the right direction for healing the fractured relationship that there was there for a number of years between SBG and Cage Warriors. We're taking a step in the right direction. Fair play to SBG, fair play to Cage Warriors, fair play to Graham Boylan, fair play to John Kavanagh. And then the next step that I think that needs to happen now is for SBG, so SBG HQ, SBG Ireland to have a fighter. The likes of what the hell is going on with Kenny Mokunwana, if we want to, we've talked about this kind of separately and over the course of the last few months, a fighter like him, I'm just throwing it a random example fighter, but where it's like, he doesn't have any fights. He seems to be in a no man's land at the moment. Get him in there just to get some fights. But yeah, this is great stuff. I'm really, really glad to see this news. And I hope that this is a step in the right direction. And again, this is not, it's actually not really about Cage Warriors. It's not really about SBG. It's about fighters having the ability to go whatever route that they want to, that, as long as they can create the opportunities for themselves, then whether it's PFL, whether it's Cage Warriors, Aries, wherever.
Exactly. It's exactly where I was going to throw it over to Caoilte, because like my opinion in all of these kind of situations and the stuff that's been happening is that, I always felt the fighters should come first, and the fighters should be able to fight where they want to fight. And, obviously there is kind of, that loyalty towards your gym and situations there as well. But like Caoilte, this is a step in the right direction as well. And hopefully we see a couple of more fighters. Now, there's no fighters coming out and saying that they want to fight in Cage Warriors and they're not allowed to fight in Cage Warriors. So, but it's been pretty common knowledge that we haven't seen too much SBG affiliated fighters fighting in Cage Warriors over the last number of years. But I'm happy that we've seen Max and Conor. I think they're the two kind of fighters that deserve to be in kind of that Cage Warrior setting. Obviously their aspirations are to move forward towards the UFC as well. Cage Warriors have provided that pathway for a lot of fighters in the past, and I'm sure they'll continue to do so in the future. So all comes to all, I think we're all in agreement. Fighters need to come first. What's best for the fighters? Every fighter is different. Every fighter might want to go a different kind of a route as well. We can talk about the other routes in just a minute, but your thoughts on the signings of Max and Conor to Cage Warriors, Caoilte?
Yeah, look, like Andy said, it's brilliant. There's no barriers to entry to a promotion now, which can build you to the likes of a UFC. Typically the UFC, and give you good matchups and take the route that was previously taken by a lot of fighters. So now it just looks like the doors are open, and it's seeing two top prospects like Conor and Max going in there. I'm interested to see how they get on, how they're matched, how they're built. And look, long may it continue. Hopefully we see a few more. There's a lot of Irish lads that we could mention that we love to see inside Cage Warriors, offering a bit of competition across the different divisions. So look, brilliant. I'm delighted to see it. Hopefully there's a few more on the way, but who knows?
It'll be interesting to see. Look at it. Obviously, route through Cage Warriors is for to get into the UFC. And look, Tanny McCormick is a kind of a fighter right now who has done everything right, but hasn't been kind of given what she deserves, in my opinion, in getting signed to the UFC. And sparring that conversation over and back the last number of weeks and hearing some details as well. What we're hearing from the UFC brass is obviously, they want fighters that are undefeated, and they're not looking for maybe fighters late or mid-30s, late 30s and stuff like that. Another thing that's kind of been coming across is that UFC are not really, I'll say it because this is what I heard, but I also have a counter argument to that as well at the same time. It's like hearing that UFC brass are, if you've picked up a loss in PFL or if you've picked up a loss in Bellator, well then, that's looked at as a stain on your record as well. And UFC are not really looking at fighters like that, which I think is a little bit unfortunate. And I have seen fighters that have losses on their records in Bellator and PFL get signed. So I think when it comes to the UFC, it's very situational, but it's interesting to kind of take into account, and what kind of a mindset, Andy, does that present to fighters when they are choosing their path to get to where they want to be. And maybe some fighters don't want to go to the UFC route either. Maybe they want to go down the PFL route, shoot for the million, Paul Hughes being the big example. But, you're kind of getting mixed messages from the UFC brass. But what we do know is in Cage Warriors, you go in there, you win your fights, you can become a champion. It's not even a case of becoming a champion really anymore in Cage Warriors. I think we've seen lots of fighters getting brought in onto the Contender Series. Some win and progress, some lose, and they go back to the drawing board there as well. So it's a really unusual situation, and the pathway that's being formed or has been formed in the past doesn't seem to be the same kind of pathway that fighters are dealing with right now. You could look at the UFC's kind of methods behind and looking for fighters right now that plays some kind of an effect as well. But it's a really, really important decision that fighters have to make so early into their career. Where do you feel that the kind of pendulum has shifted a little bit on what the expectations are? And, normally we get a fighter into Cage Warriors, or, you can be successful in another organization and make that route in there. But it seems like the doorway to the UFC is mainly through Dana White's Contender Series now. And it kind of makes things a hell of a lot more difficult for everybody.
Yeah, I think it's unquestionable when you look at if you look at the stats. There's plenty of people on Twitter who throw stats out there as to the volume and the percentages of fighters on the UFC roster who've come through Contender Series. It's overwhelmingly the path to getting in at this point. So, what that means is what we've heard from other fighters, and what we're seeing across the board is at one point in time, like if we're talking about Cage Warriors right now, at one point in time, Cage Warriors was like, you went into Cage Warriors, it was the pinnacle of European MMA, and it was you fight the toughest fights and get to the belt, and it was that belt around your waist that was your validation of you're the best in the UK or Ireland or Europe or whatever it may be. And that's when the UFC look at you, and that's when they take you. Well, the UFC have changed everything now. They've flipped it on its head to say, well, actually you can be George Hardwick and you can have a belt wrapped around your waist and everyone can think you're the best fighter in an organization, but we're still going to throw you in on Contender Series against, an absolute killer. And you're not going to get any special treatment. You're not going to get any special contract. You're just still one of the numbers that are going to be churned through the system, which is the entry into the UFC. And that's a very obviously like black and white way of looking at it, but like that's kind of what's happening. Like we see the likes of Lonnie Kavanagh, of Luke Riley, of Owen Elliott, who have not held gold in Cage Warriors, but are getting opportunities. So now if you're a fighter on the come up, and let's say if you're going through the Cage Warriors route, it's like, well, do I need to get the title? No. Like, I don't need to get it. I need to be undefeated.
You don't really need to get it right now. The title isn't an essential part of it now. I think, maybe fighters want to make the kind of... Look, Paddy Pimblett is a kind of a good example of the guy who turned down the UFC a couple of times until he knew he was ready. It's like, whether you think you're ready or whether you don't think you're ready, when the UFC calls, it must be very hard to turn down that call. And, we've heard times when you do turn down that call that unless you're undeniable or very marketable, like you might not get that call again. So like it's a tricky situation that fighters are in right now. But I would go as far as to say that the Dana White Contender Series has devalued regional titles like Cage Warriors titles and other organizations too. We're seeing it in the States as well. We're seeing some of these up and coming fighters being taken from CCFC and other organizations. It's not just Cage Warriors here. But I've been saying that for quite some time, that it's the landscape on how to get into the UFC has shifted, and I think that has kind of played a little bit of an effect, Caoilte, on the overall product that is being delivered by regional shows right now, and I think that's unfortunate, really, isn't it?
Yeah, completely, because that Contender Series now, if you look through any of the cards, there are a lot of people who beyond them tend to be relatively young and primarily undefeated or have a decent record with maybe one loss. So it's like boxing, not like boxing, where we don't see lads cutting their teeth as long in, I guess, the regional promotions, and maybe they're not taking as tough a fights as they probably would have maybe 2 or 3 years ago, 4 years ago, whatever you want to call it. And it seems that route to the UFC has changed quite a lot to what it has. Before you'd have to, like you were saying, you'd have to go through all the way to nearly go through to the title and then get the call up. Now it seems
they used to call it, are you UFC ready? Remember when we used to be talking like that? Are you UFC ready? And now
but now you could fight lads who are now you could build your record with guys who may not be up to an amazing caliber, maybe UFC caliber, or even Cage Warriors caliber, and you could do that for 5 fights and still get into Dana White Contender Series and potentially have your opportunity to get into the UFC from there. I don't want to say it's become easier, but you're right in saying the landscape has changed, because there are so many different ways of getting into Contender Series to get to the UFC is probably how it's changed. It's not like how it used to be, and
Which is unfortunate for the fighters that go over to the Contender Series, because my problem with the Contender Series was always that you were fighting a UFC level fight, but it's not in the UFC. So rather, if you were just say, like Hardwick, who went out there and lost on the Contender Series, right? If he was signed full on and that was his first fight of a 3-fight deal in the UFC, well, if you lost that one, well, then you have 2 more opportunities to kind of rectify that too. And I think that the Contender Series kind of takes that away from fighters in terms of, you have one bad night and that's it. You're back to the drawing board. We were talking a little bit before we started recording here, talking about Hardwick here and non-Irish MMA fighters, but someone like Mason Jones, who, obviously got signed to the UFC, didn't work out, went back to Cage Warriors, and now he's in somewhat limbo now. So we're talking about the problems here, Andy. What's the solution? What's the solution here?
Well, the solution, there is no like easy solution, but like
no.
What it means is that like MMA is changing, and MMA is going to continue to change, and how fighters approach their careers is going to change. So like we're obviously looking at the UFC is one option. We've seen Paul Hughes, who has a huge fight coming up in Saudi Arabia in the not too distant future, is going down the different route, looking to secure his financial future. Fighters now need to make a decision, probably more than ever, as to, I know if I really want to chase this dream of UFC, well, I'm more than likely not going to go in at any other contract other than an entry level 12 and 12 or whatever it may be at the time. And that's just the reality of the situation. And like to your point, like you either have to, I feel like some fighters have gotten in through kind of the legacy way of getting to title. Like Reese McKee, I feel like it was his body of work in Cage Warriors that got him in. Shawn O'Bannon was obviously finishing fights. She was undefeated. That's what got her in. Kiefer Crosby had a great knockout of Cabo Oliveira and was ready when he needed to be ready. When they needed someone, that was his method of getting in, was to be like, I'm here, I'll fly to the other side of the world on 2 weeks' notice. And that afforded them the luxury, for lack of a better word, of being able to go in there and, okay, maybe not win their first, but they still get another fight. Whereas to your point, like you go on the Contender Series, you've like Owen Elliott's going in there and he's fighting the Oktagon champion. So to your point about it's not just Cage Wars, it's devaluing other belts too. You have to choose. So I think when fighters look at it now, like I realize we've been kind of harping on being like, oh, I'd love to see this person or that person in Cage Warriors. Well, really, you have to evaluate and say, what do I need to do to get to the UFC? And I hate that I'm about to say this, but I need to be undefeated. I need to be finishing fights, and I need my finishes and my body of work to be out there and easily consumable online. And that's really what it is. It's,
and you're saying that you're saying that fighters need that because that's what the UFC are fucking telling fighters as well.
I hate that it's gone this way.
Yeah, I know. I do too, because it's putting a false onus on fighters to make that jump too soon. I think the importance of building your career is, don't get to the UFC, it's getting there and being able to stay there, because they're just a juggernaut. They're just going to stay churning through fighters as well. And with the PFL, it's a different route. You have that more financial security. You have different options, but what you don't have is you don't have the eyes watching it, if we're being real. And we don't know if that model is sustainable either, if we're being real. You know what I mean? Don Davis out here talking about this Francis Ngannou card being more expensive than the UFC Sphere card. I asked the question, well, how is that sustainable? Because where are you going to make that money back? UFC made a good bit of that money back based off ticket sales and probably pay-per-views. Those are kind of all, red flags. I mean,
dig for a bit more oil.
Yeah, exactly. We're after getting into a big open can of worms here on a couple of different cases. So I think it's a good, we've had the kind of conversations like this before on the podcast. I think it was kind of, like you said, a bit of a down week, not much going on, but, I think it's always a good kind of topic of conversation to kind of see where the landscape is. And like you said, Andy, the landscape is always changing in MMA and in Irish MMA too,
I like having these conversations, and I like to bring it back to Irish MMA. Like, I'm going to be completely blunt here. It is easier. It's easier to get into the UFC now, and I think that back, like when you look back when Kyle Pendred and Neil Seary and Aisling Daly and Paul Redmond and all these guys were coming up. I don't know what's going on the screen there. Were coming up, right? They had no other option but to claw and scrape and take any fight that's available to them and fight whoever it may be, and they had no other option other than to do that, because that was the only path that they had. So now with this new era where it's you're looking at your career and you're being like, well, I need to be undefeated, so I'm gonna have to manage my fights, and it puts the onus on the fighter to decide how you approach things. You have options now, and so it's now on the fighter to be like, oh, I'm gonna make sure that I'm taking tough fights, and fights that'll make sure that I know I'm ready to hit the UFC level, rather than there being no other option. And in one way, it's a great thing that fighters have options. On the other hand, it can potentially, for some fighters, mean that they could get there but then not be ready and not be able to excel when they get to the UFC. And additionally, from a viewer's point of view and from MMA as a product, it makes it a bit more it just makes it shit, because you end up having like not entertaining fights, squash matches. You have title fights where there may be 3 or 4 guys in a division who should be fighting each other and they don't, and ultimately it leads to a weakened product. And that's just obviously selfishly looking from the viewer's point of view, but that's also what contributes to the whole ecosystem of MMA and the success of MMA as a sport and as a product. So we've gone completely off the rails here, but
no, not at all. It's a very good point, and I think it's a kind of a good way to wrap up the conversation and a good way to kind of move on to what we're going to talk about next, and that is a fighter who has made a decision, and that decision was to join Cage Warriors. News broke last week. So let's head on over and have a chat with Max Lally about the signing with Cage Warriors and a couple of other things as well. We'll send it right over for that right now.
And now we're joined by Cage Warriors' most recent signing, Max Lally. For people who are tuning into this one, we're going to start this a little bit different how we usually do, and we're going to get a couple of focal o Max and show.
Conwyd con Gaeilge lífa a coint.
Sin Conna tá tú, Max?
Tá mé an sásta ag signing go dtí Cage Warriors agus sin
Max just said he's delighted to have signed with Cage Warriors.
Go on, Andy. So good.
Max, tháinig túach ar Instagram an cúpla seachna hin beidir, agus ag rá le gach duine bhfuil tú chuníirtí dhéanamh leabhar Gaeilge a bhfad níos mó, agus cleachta dhéanamh agus all a bhfad níos seair de Gaeilge, I guess. Céim fá, chunas hála sé seo, céim fá bhfuil tú ag leabhart níos mó Gaeilge?
So, scéile gom, cara dé mó ahar, bhí sé ag sé cointlum nar bhí sé sa teach agus tá Gaeilge lífa aige, agus bhí mu a coint cúpa focail Gaeilge, agus deir sé lom Max céim fá ní cointú Gaeilge níos mó, agus ní raibh aon
excuse.
Ní raibh exactly. Ní mo Gaeilge mó ach tá mé chun mo díhil dhéanamh ach ní raibh aon excuse gom nach ar Gaeilge a coint. So dúirt bhí mé coint an sin le mar athair, agus dúirt mé leis tá mé chun níos mó Gaeilge a coint, agus cúpla post on Instagram i dhéanamh i Gaeilge, agus mo teanga a leabhart níos mó. Dúirt tusalm Instagram Caoilte is bralum Gaeilge briste nó béir le cliste, agus sin so tá mé ag cúpla focail I mo vocabulary gach lá, agus tá mé chun an down a taiispáint Gaeilge, agus sin seo art-hanga, agus tá sé anna important chun tá sé anna important chun a coint agus eolum freisin. So tá mé ag eolum MMA gach lá, agus ach cúpla nóid sa lá coint Gaeilge, agus ag úsáid Google Translate ach níl Google Translate ráá.
Folklore that hey, Max.
And now we'll go to our in-cage translator Ian O'Neill to help the people listening who haven't a fucking clue what's going on.
I can say that I am one of those people who hasn't a fucking clue what's going on. I know Caoilte asked him how he spoke Irish, but kind of lost it after that. Or yeah, Max, can you translate to all of the numpties like myself that don't know our native tongue?
So Caoilte asked me, Max, where did the whole Irish speaking narrative come from? And I just said to him, I have a story. A friend of my dad's came in. We were talking in the house, and he is amazing Irish. And he was asking me, Max, why don't you speak it? Because for someone who doesn't speak Irish too often, I suppose my Irish isn't the best, but I still have a lot to, improve on. But I kind of said I had no excuse not to speak it, and I kind of put a lot of thought into it, and it's not a language that is spoken very much in the country, a lot of people, like it's the Gaeilge community, everyone that speaks Irish, they love to see someone, speaking Irish, and I was just kind of like, well, I'm gonna have the platform soon enough to, to speak it and to show it, so why not get better at it and show people our beautiful native language, like it's I don't know, something that really kind of just struck home at me, or it was almost like a eureka moment or something like that, that I was like, Max, you speak it, you're Irish, why don't you speak it more? There's not too many people, there's probably loads in the MMA community that do speak it, but there's no one that's like openly speaking and using it, so that's when I kind of said to myself, let's show the world, and that's where it all stemmed from,
I know
You
what.
know how it goes. Tirgan Tonga, Tirgan Anam.
That's it.
We'll go for one more and we'll get to the MMA stuff then. So could you tell us bun skull tree Gaeilge na or Gaeilge so ala come no just could you bun skull no
No, so could maybe the on bun skull kill Eglon, Gael skull na killer. Go Níl an hincher suas go dtí rang a sé agus an sin nor cúg mé go dtí manscoil rinne mé Gaeilge an sin freisin ach bhí an bunscoil ní raibh cead agat béarla úsáid bhí sé Gaeilge sin é ach sa manscoil bhí cead agat béarla úsáid so like nor a cúg mé go dtí an manscoil nor bhí mé blian a hain bhí Gaeilge lífa gom like bhí mé ábalta like caint le na mútóirí Gaeilge furfucht agus gachrúir agus an sin nor bhí mé blian a cúig bhí sé like ní raibh sé ráhá ach fág mé an scóil blian a cúig agus dus thusigh mé a gobar agus ní raibh mé a caint Gaeilge níos mó nar fág mé an scóil so se
Rud amháin agus stóil an rud tábhachtach comá ná let us ag leabhart Gaeilge a bhd níos mó is agus úsáid de platform chun a bheith ag leabhart Gaeilge agus haspáint an dam an tanga an dólaat bhí go méid I guess the likes of na TG Car agus an bheoh súil go méid siad ag clúdach like clúdach dotridna fiú just MMA I gin aráilta inis an dólaach bhfuil seans go méid sé sin ag tarlúnt.
Se like tá is go me tá is go bhfuil like níl ein MMA tridor ag le tá sin tá is go níl MMA níl ein airgid sa amateur MMA sa tír seo ach like if beg mis ábalta the maybe like I don't know Kubaldini commentating os Gaeilge nor Thomas through the cage warriors now in UFC fishin rud over sa tír agus an sin níl níos má súla ormsa ach an sport MMA agus ceapam I móthúmse tá sin am rud is tábhachtach an rud is tábhachtach ná an sport ná mise ach like an sport mar tá go leor páistí chun bheith ag teach suas tar éis mise ag déanamh an sport seo agus like smaoinmh it ó ceann like how chuna it like beg on níl an focail agam ach tá an Sky an limit lena páistí sa sport tar éis mise mar tá an level sa tír an seo inis sa amateur tá sé anmha like tá mise ag fecinn ar cúpla na tridna IUR agus cage conflict agus like tá mó ceann blán like so like tá sin an rud is tábhachtach go mórm se just níos má siúla like tá is gom tá MMA móra in a lán like in a lá tír mar a lán tír sa down ach like níl like if he's an sport MMA mar pel Gaeilge if smee tú sin like big sin like you know unbelievable so tá sin like an plan beidir if tá súil an sport ag TG car begur mo Gaeilge á níos fear ach se like just ceapam an sport seo tá sin an rud is tábhachta agus sin é.
Just to try and clue people in who've been just sitting around for the last few minutes, I'm going to try and attempt a condensed version of Max's answer. He's gone blank here. I don't know if he can hear us still, but I'll give everyone, while we wait for him to get back, what I think Max said and what Caoilte was asking him was around his background into speaking Irish, that he went to a primary school. He had brilliant Irish up until, 6th class. They had to speak Irish in the school, but he went to secondary school then and they didn't. So, as with anyone, the same as when I went down to the Gaeilge when I was 13 years old, didn't really speak a lick of Irish down there because they didn't really enforce it. Max left school when he was in 5th year, didn't speak it after that. And then what Caoilte was asking him, as I think Max is potentially rejoining us here, what Caoilte was asking him was, could you ever see MMA being on the likes of a TG Cahir? And Max was saying, basically, like, there's, now I could be getting this part wrong, so you can correct me, but there's not a lot of money in MMA, and it's not really, money isn't the most important. It's more about growing the sport. And for him, with a load of kids coming up behind him, that if they could get to a place where Caoilte could have a job on TG Cahir and Max could be getting interviewed on TG Cahir.
Sorry, lads, I don't know, I can't hear you.
Okay,
we can hear you now.
We can hear you. Can you hear us now? Yeah.
Right, Max is back with us, folks. He can hear us now. What I was saying,
what's the Irish for technical difficulties?
Better off ask Caoilte than me, lads.
Check for key technology, lads. There we go.
There you go. He has it.
Off the bar. You had Google Translate at the back, I bet you.
Maybe yeah.
That's brilliant.
Max, I was just saying, basically, your Irish was brilliant in school. You went to a Gaeilge school in primary. You went to secondary, and you weren't forced to speak it as much. So naturally, you'd speak a bit less and less. You left school in 5th year and went working, and of course, like that's really it. But what Caoilte was asking was, could we ever see, MMA on TG Cahir, or getting to a place where we can have these type of things? And what I think that you said was that, look, there's not much money, and money might not even be the most important thing for you. It's more, you will have a platform. There'll be loads of kids coming up behind you, and you'd like to get MMA to a place where it's as big as Gaelic football, where you can have it on, where Caoilte could be commentating and you could be in the cage doing a post-fight interview in Gaeilge. So that's kind of where I got to, but that's the most important for you is to kind of to bring MMA to new heights in the country, and be that kind of that shining light. So in and around saying something like that, anyway, it was as best as I could cobble together.
Yeah, no, that's it. That's bang on. Yeah, that's bang on. I just think that there's so much talent in the country in MMA, and it's just like, if they had the support system, maybe like the Gaelic football teams, like even the football teams, hurling, even if it was, and now it's not now, it's not really out of Ireland's hands, but you see a lot of the IMAFs, the Russian team, getting funded, getting looked after, getting sent over to represent. It's like, maybe if, we were to get the eyes on MMA through, speaking Irish, like that's a real possibility, and as well as that, it's like, the amount of times I'll be abroad and like I'll speak a little bit of it, and people are like, Ireland has their own native language. I never knew that. It's like so unbeknownst to everyone. It's like we're taught it in schools, and it's like, why not speak it? It's like, this is our native language. I think it's only really, it's hit me over the past month how important it actually is, to be able to speak it, so. That's what I think. I think it'd be a real possibility, for, MMA shows to be shown on TG Car, to be commentated, to be interviewed, by TG Car in Irish, and just show the world that, this is our language. This is how we speak. This is what we did speak, and I just think it's super important to get that out there, lads.
I absolutely love it, Max. And from an
That's
Irish
it,
speaker,
Gaeilge.
it's absolutely, like, it's great to see, and hopefully more people start joining in with you and speaking Irish around the community as well. So yeah, fair play for that. But look, we get on to the good stuff. In terms of what the recent news is, look, you signed with Cage Warriors, massive decision. Can you talk to us about how that feels, and the decision around signing for Cage Warriors?
It's indescribable, This was like, this was just like something. It was like, with kind of Cage legacy, everyone kind of knows what's after happening. It just kind of closed down. I was chasing that fight with Narius Bardowski, and we did speak about it, but we just didn't think his demands and my demands, I just think they couldn't be met on an Irish regional show. And this was the whole point, was to have a big fight like that on the Irish regional scene. So what I was looking for was, I'm looking for that level of opponent, and it's like, where provides that? Where provides me to sharpen my skills as a young man in this sport early on in my professional career, to tailor me towards where I want to go? And I just thought Cage Warriors was just the best fit, and that's what helped me conclude the decision. So obviously you seen me put the post up on my Instagram. Everyone was tagging Cage Warriors. Ian Dean got onto me, was like, get your people onto me, and after that it was like clockwork, and the deal was done and then announced. So yeah.
Was there ever temptation to go down another route, or with maybe other potential offers, other promotions? Because I imagine you had a lot of interest around, but was Cage Warriors the number one promotion on your mind?
Yes, like without a doubt, because it's like, my mum, my dad, my whole family will tell you, it wasn't an MMA fighter that I wanted to be when I was younger. It was a UFC fighter. I wanted to be in the UFC. This is, in my opinion, this is the premier. Like, how will I explain it? Is like, I'm after getting into a good championship team, and I want to make it to the Premier League, and this is like the apprenticeship to get to where I want to go to. Now, I'm not saying that, of course, is other routes, but I just think with the history embedded in Cage Warriors, it's like, I'm fighting for legacy. I'm fighting. I want to be the best fighter to ever come out of this country. And I know that sounds absolutely ridiculous to some people, but that is the God honest truth. That is what I've driven for. Since I'm a young kid and since I've started the sport. And through the years, there has not been one thing that has deterred that from my thought process. This is the path I want to go down. I want to win the Cage Warriors title, cement myself in the Cage Warriors promotion, and then carry on to the UFC. And I just think, with that in my head, money can't buy that. You know what I mean? If I was to achieve that, you know, I would turn that down. And it sounds, as I said, it sounds mad by some people. I would turn that down for any paycheck, you know, because for me that means more, you know.
Does it give you a bit of comfort knowing when you're going to Cage Warriors, you most likely won't have to deal with a lot of the issues with getting opponents and last minute replacements constantly, like you did kind of deal with on the regional scene as well?
Yeah, and that's another. It's like people who are signed to Cage Warriors. Ian Dean, he's a savage matchmaker. He's one of the best matchmakers. You know, when you look at some of the fights that he puts on, it's a no-brainer for myself. It's like I was supposed to, my first fight was another debut, making his debut as well, you know. And then in my second and third pro fight, like that, a last minute step in, and it's just like it doesn't feel like a fight. I know I perform my best when I'm going into a fight and everyone's saying Max won't win that. That's when I'm at my best. You know what I mean? But in some ways, you know, in fairness to Deco, maybe if that was another show, I wouldn't even have had a fight, if you know what I mean. But it's like, the way I kind of look at it is, it's like, you know, I think my last proper fight that felt like a proper fight was my last amateur fight with Tiernan. And all the others have kind of been like, if I don't go in there and school this fella in 90 seconds, it's a loss. And that's literally what I was thinking before them, you know, them other 3 pro fights. Maybe I should have gone down a different route. Maybe I shouldn't. I think maybe it was a bit of a learning kind of curve, but I know my level. And that's why I don't think there's a better time for myself to go into Cage Warriors to show everyone in this country and all over the world, you know, what I'm all about, you know. So I just think that being in there, if anything was to go wrong, you know, touch wood, it won't, that I get another high level replacement in, you know, because at the end of the day, these fights in my career are going to be the most important, you know. It's no two thoughts about it, because it's like, if I'm going in, it's all well going in fighting cans and stuff like that. I'd rather get found out early on in my career than later on, you know. So that's what it's about. It's about getting them hard fights in, you know, and getting that experience in against them tough guys.
I think you've always been pretty consistent in that regard, Max. Like, when you've been on with us before, you've talked about wanting to test yourself, about wanting, you know, to make those big fights and really kind of putting your ego aside. Now that you know that, like, there's going to be a stark difference between the last 3 lads that you fought and, you know, as you start to progress in Cage Warriors and start facing maybe some of the regular names there, like, there's a lot of exciting matchups in there for you that will test you a lot more. Are you excited about that? Like, you strike me as a guy who does get excited about these things.
Oh man, that's what gets you out of bed in the morning. That's what gets me up. You know what I mean? That's what gets me going. Them fights. It's like, as I said, I always find this. I'll always match the level I'm fighting at. Does that make sense? It's like, I know for a fact, I know my level and I know how good I am. You know what I mean? Especially with this decision now to go down to 135 pounds. Like, I know I am a problem, and I'm a problem from the get-go. Like, it's gonna be a case like that, you know. Is I'll get me foot in the door. I'll get 1 or 2, 3 fights, and if that title shot gets knocking after 2, 3 fights, you better believe I'm jumping on it with 2 hands. You know, and it's just like that. I feel like people have seen so little of me. Does that make sense? And it's not that I don't care about that, because the only thing I care about is getting in there and fighting. You know what I mean? Because that's, in my opinion, the purest form of you know, emotion you can feel. But, you know, I think that people will be very surprised when I go in there and see what I'm about, you know, because they don't know too much about me. But I promise you, when they see me in them yellow gloves next year, they'll know all about me, you know. So that's what I'm looking forward to the most, and getting them big fights. And it's just exciting times, boys. You know what I mean?
100%, Max. Look, you mentioned the move down to 135. That also was breaking news along with the announcement of the signing for Cage Warriors. For you, the decision to move down, what were some of the defining factors in you making that decision to move down to 135 to sign with Cage Warriors?
Because I don't cut much weight, boys. It's like I look back at some of my amateur fights. I won the 2021 under 18 Worlds at 170 pounds, and now here I am fighting a bantamweight. Like I never cut weight, you know. But what's after happening is I've taken a lot more of a professional approach. I say my last 3 amateur fights to now, and how I eat, how I train, how I just, you know, how I approach, you know, a fight camp. And I'm listening to guys, you know, that are like killing themselves. I think I had to sweat out maybe 2.5 kilos last time to make 66, to make 145. So I'm not cutting too much weight to get to 145. So that's where the decision came from, you know. If I get bigger and I need to move up, you know, and I doubt they'll have too much of a problem with that. But for right now, it's 135, and I'd love to get a run and get a shot at that 135 belt, because I do believe I'm a huge problem at that weight class, you know.
Yeah. So in your opinion, obviously going into Cage Warriors, and this has been a topic of conversation that we've been kind of talking about. We opened the podcast this week with kind of a conversation surrounding, you know, the current landscape for up and coming fighters coming through the regional scenes. Now, obviously with the introduction of Dana White's Contender Series, we've seen a lot of fighters, you know, maybe go and jump at that opportunity, and that's their decision, maybe before getting the chance to get that Cage Warriors title. For you, do you feel for your career that getting that Cage Warriors title is necessary before you make that move over to the UFC, whether it be through the Contender Series or whether it be a straight signing?
To be honest, that's a great question. I would be in now. Here's the thing: it's like I think you'd have to assess where you think you are skill wise. You know, I don't believe that you should be going into the UFC at like an okay level. And this is just my thought process. I don't know if other fighters are like this or think like this. This is my dream scenario. I want to go into the UFC when I'm a top 15 fighter and skill everyone. You know what I mean? I don't want to just be getting into just be there, you know? So in regards to that, I do think a Cage Warriors belt would be, I think it would be a fantastic achievement. But then at the same time, if you're assessing your level and you think you're there, you know, why not take the Contender Series? I think when opportunity comes knocking, you know, why not jump at it, you know? But then at the same time, it's like, I think if I was to be in that predicament, you know, and it was like a Cage Warriors title shot or a Contender Series, you know, I think that the level of opponent is the same. It's like, why not take the Contender Series shot and try to get into the UFC? But then at the same time, it's like, if you go into a title shot, you know, for Cage Warriors and you don't win that belt, are you good enough for UFC? You know what I mean? So it's a good query. It's a good question. But I think that, you know, if you win a Cage Warriors belt and defend it once, you are ready for the UFC. You know what I mean? I think that's a given. So we'll see. We'll see in 2-3 years' time if I'm in that predicament, and I'll come back at you with a proper question. You know, but
it'd be a nice problem to have. It'd be a nice problem to have.
Yes, it would. Yes, it would.
Max, you spoke about the history of Cage Warriors, and you know, like what it means, like what the belt means, what the lineage, I guess, of Irish MMA within the promotion. Of course, there's been the likes of Neil Seary and Paul Redmond, who's done great things on Team Rhino, but SBG and Cage Warriors are completely interlinked when it comes to the history of Irish MMA and the history of Cage Warriors. And we haven't had SBG fighters for the most part in Cage Warriors for the last while. I know you're not training in HQ, you're obviously training out of Charlestown and over in Nace now as well, and of course DCA as well. But I'm looking at this as yourself signing. We've got Conor McCarthy, your teammate, signing, who I see you doing loads of work with now. And to me, this is almost like, one, it's a brilliant step in the right direction for Irish MMA and for Cage Warriors. And two, it's almost like this new era of like, okay, SBG are back in cage, whereas you've signed at the same time as Conor McCarthy, who's another one of the, you know, the rise and the biggest prospects coming through in Irish MMA alongside yourself. What's it like for you? Do you think about those things, and are you and Conor, like, what are the conversations that you two are having together? Because obviously you're on the rise, on the same path now together as well.
I think we both fine well believe that we're going to do unbelievable things in the promotion and get to the UFC. Like, those are the conversations, you know. Like, I feel Conor's level every day, and he's made me twice the fighter, and it's not just me and Conor. It's like, you're gonna see some killers coming through, you know. Like, you have young Alex Blade in the taxis outside Caoilte. Like, he is that young is scary. You're gonna have loads, you know what I mean? And it's like, I don't know, like there hasn't been a Cage Warriors champion since Conor out of SBG, if I'm correct. Has there?
No, I don't think
Was
so.
Pendrick before or after? I can't remember now.
I don't know if he was before or after Conor. That's the thing. That's why I was querying.
Yeah, I think since Conor, it's been Reese, Ian, or Joe, Reese, Ian, and Paul. I think that's it.
Yeah.
So there you go. So, like, that'd be the first kind of, because, you know, all the boys from Rhino and KF and stuff like that, like, they're doing great things. But that's, as you said, it's like there hasn't really been. It seemed that the preferred route is PFL, but like, I just think, while I'm young, why not just chase my dream, you know? Because this is something that I know for a fact, no matter the result, I'll have no regrets about, you know. Because that's that question laid at rest. It's like this. Your dream is the UFC. That's why I started training, you know. That's why I started training. So now it's like, this pathway brings you to the UFC if performances are up to par. So it's I think it's a great thing for me and Conor, you know, to get our foot in there, and I don't know, who knows who will follow suit after us, you know.
I'll just fact check myself there very quickly before someone jumps on my case. It was Conor, and then it was Pendred, and then Siri, and then everyone I mentioned, and of course Caelan the Don Loughran as well. So just before anyone comes from my throat.
No, language covered.
So that there you are, and then can't forget about Jimbo Slice as well. But
and there we go.
We know everything. We're only buzzing boys, but but that's it's like, you listen to that lineup of names, you know, it's to be up there with them, you know, that is where I want to cement myself, you know. It's like, I could have maybe gone down the PFL Bellator route, but at the same time, you know, it's like that promotion's doing great things, you know, with the tournaments and stuff like that. But I think my dreams prioritize what they're doing. You know, it's just, I'm a person that I'm very strong-headed, and I've said it to my coaches from the start, you know, what is your dream? What are you planning to do? And that answer's never changed. You know, it's always been UFC. So that's where I wanna head. And, you know, when I start getting my foot in and getting my streak of wins together, you know, I think that it's very possible for me to be in them UFC gloves in the next 2-3 years, you know.
Max, the next step towards that dream is probably going to happen hopefully soon, but do you have an estimate on when you may potentially wear those yellow gloves for the first time? I can see 4 shows at Cage Warriors end of the year. You've had 2 this year yourself, 2 fights. So do you expect to get out by the end of the year, or is it going to be looking at 2025?
It's going to be 2025, and I'll tell you why, because I'm currently doing a simulation test cut just to familiarise myself with this cut to 135, you know. So that'll be done this half of the year. A few boys will be getting brought in for myself to spar after that cut is done, to simulate a fight. And then I'll be off to Thailand, to Bangtail, until January, until I think about the start of April I get back. So from then, it's a go. It could be April, it could be May, it could be June, but it will be definitely that first half of the year, and then hopefully another 1 or 2 then towards the end of the year, you know.
Wonderful. Look, we've kept you for 30, 35, nearly 35 minutes now. Thanks a million for coming on. It's always a pleasure to speak to you. And Gurmila Socht na Cúpla Focal as well. So we'll chat again soon, I'm sure.
Fáilte out. Beggar Andy agus éana Gaeilge níos fear at all.
Thanks for joining us. Thanks a lot, Max. Appreciate the time.
Of course, lads. Take care.
All right, boys, let's break down a couple of the fights that have gone on. Cage Warriors 177 and 178 did have some Irish attraction on it. Not a great weekend for the Irish in Cage Warriors last weekend or the weekend before. Unfortunately, losses for Adam Shelley, losses for Matthew Friel, and obviously Dara Ward as well. Let's get into it. Let's start off with Adam Shelley Caoilte. You know, my big takeaway here is that he was put in there against Marin Vetrila. Very, very good fighter. You know, some interesting exchanges in that fight, but ultimately Vetrila did have the ability to kind of cut off the cage. He walked Adam Shelley onto a big overhand right, which rocked Adam, and obviously the fight played out that way, and Adam was stopped in by a TKO in the first round. Unfortunate turn of events for him. Had flashes in this, but like I said, Vetrila, very good fighter, very powerful, and it was a tough task for Adam Shelley on.
It was, like, I think he's had 2 really tough matchups in a row now between, like, you know, Ewan Davis and now Marin Vetrila. I didn't know what to expect from this Vetrila lad whatsoever, and wow, yeah, he was impressive. He closed the distance well. He picked his shots. I think the way he read the fight was quite well. The way he was, you know, kind of cutting the angles or picking his shots well against Adam Shelley, who was trying to work on the outside. And yeah, like, there was flashes, but nothing major. I think Vetrila was just the better man of the day, and he landed some really nice shots, big knee in the clinch, and then that big right hand that just dropped him. And yeah, it was a nasty enough knockout, to be honest. I was taken aback when it happened, but yeah, it's a shame.
Yeah, it was for me, I think a key component in the fight, Andy, was Vetrila's ability not to allow Shelley fight at that distance, fight at that range where he does some of his best work. He, like Caoilte said, I think he closed the distance quite well. I think he cut off the cage quite well, and then when he was in that, you know, close proximity, getting those big shots, looked strong in the clinch, and, you know, just Adam Shelley wasn't able to get going in that fight.
Yeah, he look, make no mistake, this was from what I could see, it was all Vetrila. Like, he was using his feints well. His movement was better. He was quicker. He was better on the night in every area that I saw than Adam Shelley really here. Which is obviously not a great thing to be saying about an Irish fighter, but that's the reality of what I saw there, was that he just did a brilliant job of getting inside. Shelley, as you said, he was a lot more length on him. He wasn't able to get his kicks off and keep it at kicking range. And then additionally, obviously, you know, he has that kind of the Taekwondo style. His hands were a little low, which I'm not saying is like a bad thing every single time. But when you have a guy who's really quick, really powerful punching, and he's getting inside, it ended up being a recipe for disaster for Shelley, unfortunately. And Vetrila looks, when I like, not to go blow completely out of the water or just because an Irish fighter lost, but like,
you were calling him UFC world champion there last weekend.
No, but like, he you know, when you see someone move, like, he just looks like when, like, Paul Hughes and James Hendon and Charrier, when they were in their early fights, he looks like someone who could be of that kind of caliber. I don't know. I've only seen him in one fight. I haven't watched him fight before, I'll be perfectly honest. So we shall see. But I was very impressed by Vetrila.
Yeah, you can do. I know exactly what you're saying. You can see how he moves, how calm and composed he is in the exchanges as well. Like, we'll talk about
things up as well.
Yeah, I mean, like very good early signs, like, early in your professional career. I think a similar point is going to be made a little bit later on when we talk about Dom Nokus as well, and how he kind of approaches fights in the cage. But look, unfortunate for Adam Shelley, tough run, but losing to two good guys, it has to be said. So obviously it's back to the drawing board for Adam. And moving on to the next night in 178, obviously Matthew Friel opened up the card against Jordan Molinari. Both making their Cage Warriors debuts. A frustrating fight for me to watch for Matthew Friel, who Gaeilge didn't really seem to want to let his hands go. Obviously the threat of the takedown from Molinari was always there, but Friel was throwing out his jab. I would have liked to seen him throw out the jab a little bit more. Maybe use that length, like it's similar enough to what we were talking about with Adam Shelley. I think, with the length of Friel and his kind of frame, allows him to fight quite well. And, I'd be curious to see, obviously he was disappointed with the loss, but, I would like to see maybe a little bit more engaging on the feet from Matthew Friel and, maybe a little bit more clinch work, elbows and stuff like that. Kind of, he had the size, he had the length advantage and just wasn't able to use it against Molinari.
No, not at all. You're right, and I think it was a frustrating fight to watch. It seemed there were a lot of moments in that fight that I really thought, especially in third round, he actually could have won that fight. I think the first round, look, it was spent mostly on the feet. He looked a bit nervous in the first round, maybe. Didn't really get his striking going whatsoever, and then he was told to try and bring it to the mat in the second round. He looked a lot better when he was grappling, and the grappling is definitely his strong point. He changed up the game plan in round 2. Looked good. I feel like he won that round. And then round 3, he seemed nearly a bit, at times, maybe too happy to try and keep it on the ground or maybe playing guard. And while Molinari, I think he kind of, he executed his game plan well, especially in round 3. He mixed things up. I think Molinari mixed things up really well and landed damage when he needed to. I think tactically, it's tactically what won Molinari that fight, to be honest.
Yeah.
And leaving the hands go maybe, or just getting used to that range and utilizing that range would have potentially won the fight for Matthew Friel if he was if he was able to get that going. But yeah, look, it was an unfortunate one, I know, and he was coming off with a frustrating loss as well that he could have won. A fight he could have won, I think, a few weeks back in Scotland as well at Budo. So, look, tough run of fights for him.
Yeah, he was a little bit disappointed. That last one was a split decision. This one, a unanimous decision. I can't argue too much with the decision. I think he just left it a little bit behind him. And excellent point too. And, ability to change it up within the fight. I think Molinari just made a couple of adjustments and Matthew wasn't able to kind of follow those adjustments. But he'll be back to the drawing board. Andy, I'll move over to you to speak about Dara Ward's fight. Look, it was a tough fight for Dara Ward on paper. And we spoke about that on the last podcast as well. And, it was a close encounter right up until the finish of the fight, which we'll talk about in a little bit of time. But you share your thoughts on the fight right up until the finish itself. And we can actually talk about it. It's a little bit of it. I wouldn't say controversy, probably the wrong word, but a lot of confusion, a lot of, wondering what happened. But we have some clarity on that situation. But I'll send it over to you, Andy, for your thoughts of it before we get into that.
Well, my main thoughts on this fight is I am a fucking idiot because I stood here, I'm at a standing desk, FYI, on this podcast and basically just disrespected George McManus completely. Was like, this guy's just going to get absolutely smashed by Dara Ward. He's cannon fodder to Team KF. And he said, fuck you, Andy. I'm going to come out here and I'm going to beat your boy, beat your Irish competitor. So, yeah, I think that this is going to be a very frustrating one for Dara Ward. But also, I think that this, whatever about the how it finished, he tapped. Like he tapped in the second round. Now, but before that, I thought he looked great in the first round. He obviously spent a lot of time on the back, got to fight to the mat, was doing very well, had a guillotine attempt as well. He cut him open in the second, and he looked like he was winning the fight up until McManus threw up the sub. Obviously, everything kind of changed then. I saw a tap, and then afterwards, as it went on, it wasn't called in the moment. he started winning the fight again. So it's a weird one where Ward looked good. He was winning the fight for all but less than a minute. And he comes away with this kind of weird, though I think the right call. Loss.
You can't think it was the right call. It was absolutely the right call. It was the right call. The right call was made in the look at Dara tapped. It was missed by ref Rich Mitchell. That's always a mouthful. I always kind of get that. Rich Mitchell. Yeah. So sorry. No, I think Rich missed the tap. He was gone around to the back. Dara had kind of made a shout. So I think Rich, what I'm led to believe that Rich traveled around to the back of the submission to see if Dara's arm had broken or if he was okay. When he went around to the back, Dara did tap 3-4 times. I saw it on the live broadcast. Obviously the replay showed that as well. There was a little bit of confusion on the broadcast as if how the decision was made. There was talks of an instant replay being used. That actually didn't happen. It was a consultation with the cage side referee, who does have the ability to step in and advise the in-cage referee on what did happen. I asked the question, a few other people might ask the question, well, why wasn't the fight stopped? And only the in-cage referee can make that decision to kind of stop the fight or look at instant replay. And when that happens, the fight cannot continue. So I think all comes to all. It was a little bit messy, a little bit of confusion, but after the consultation with the cage side ref, who was Mark Goddard, he had seen the tap at the time of it happening. They chose to make that decision in between rounds 2 and rounds 3. And, I think it was the right decision. Very unfortunate. A big learning curve for Dara. I'm sure he'll be absolutely raging at that because, like you said, Andy, he was winning that fight until he's probably the only man to maybe win and lose a fight in the one round, to be honest. And, he'll learn from that. Look, we were saying about McManus, right? Even though his record, was 4-4 or whatever, but he had gone in there against some tough guys. So it was a good test for Dara, only 3 fights into his career. Lots of lessons to be learned there. I expect Dara to bounce back fully. Do you think that the situation was handled correctly, Caoilte, overall?
Yeah. In the end, look, right decision was made. That's the most important thing. I think the officials got saved a little bit by Dara Ward not managing to finish that fight, because there was a brief moment of even I was watching it, I saw the tap and I was like, I thought it wasn't stopped, and then Dara Ward starts going for it, and if that fight got,
what happens there? Not to ask a question that we may not have the answer for, but if he goes out and finishes that fight, does he still get called back? And surely he has to, right?
I think it probably does get called back, and then I think
if it's a tap, it's a tap. I don't know.
So I think they were looking for a break in action. So that would have if the fight had been finished, it would have been a break in the action, and then I would imagine that result would have been overturned.
And then it would be a no contest or overturned to the original. Now,
that's the thing.
Obviously, it's all hypothetical, but I was all going through my mind watching it, thinking, what is going to happen with this? What at all?
Yeah, because Dara, he almost did finish George after that exchange as well. I think hindsight is a great thing. What I would have done if I was George was if you feel the tap, just let go of the submission and go off and celebrate, and then they'll obviously make the decision after the fact.
Should Ward push for a rematch?
Yes.
Yeah, you could go for a rematch, but that's a rematch that could happen a couple of fights down the line, maybe. I don't think there's any, let's take everything out after the tap that happened and put that away. It's he was winning the fight and then he lost the fight. And that's the way it is. We've seen many fighters kind of do that again. I'm sure he'd love to get that one back. Am I chomping at the bit to see it again? Not really. You could give Dara a couple of other tests and then put him in there with McManus and another couple of fights, perhaps. I don't know. But
get him against Brian Manning in that rematch after Brian called him out in the show.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that would be a tasty fight now. So I'd like to see that. Let's move on, lads, to UAE Warriors, and let's talk Omar Tugarev. 3-0. He defeated Islam Azel had first round submission, an arm triangle choke. Very impressive. Following the footsteps of
we're stretching the Auld. I love it. The Auld arm triangle now.
Hey, you gotta do what you gotta do, bro.
And he's after hitting him with the Auld rear naked choke.
Yeah, look, I think if it has triangle,
that's
in the
fair.
finish,
That's fair.
we
The
gotta
old
bring
body
it in.
triangle.
Any objections? No, thank you. Talk to me. You're fucking on one, Andy Stevenson, this podcast. Talk to me about
Giving the
Omar
people what they
Tugarev.
want. Giving the people what they want.
Go on, break down this Tugarev performance. Like, really impressive. Following in the footsteps of Omar and Shaban, obviously coming over from Finland, now sleeps in the gym at Team KF. It's the recipe for success, isn't it?
Yeah, just like uplift your life and sleepiness in a fucking smelly gym for 6 months and you'll start winning fights basically. No, this is really, really impressive by Omar. We obviously were literally talking about him on the last episode after he was coming off a win, another first round submission, and he goes in and does it again here, completely dominates, got the fight down very, very quickly, and from there it was over quick. It was over really, really quick. And like, you know, I'd say the guy he was in there against probably was nowhere near his level, which showed in the fight. But this is really, really great stuff from Tugarev, who 4-0 now in the space of 11 months, all of them first round finishes, the last 3 in the space of 2 months were all first round submissions. So, you know, he's not spending much time in the cage, but he's making a count, and very interested to see how he gets on. He's obviously over here now at UAE Warriors. We're seeing more and more KF lads going over to UAE Warriors, it seems, which I would say UAE Warriors is a great spot to be. However, and we'll talk about Dom Nokus in a little bit. They didn't have a stream for today's one, which was bizarre. So that would be a big kind of X against them. But yeah, great stuff from Tugarev. And God, if we continue seeing him fight at this clip, he could be, 5, 6, 7-0 in the space of the next few months. So it's going to be very interesting to see. Like, he's a guy who I wasn't really didn't really know about him until a few months ago, and now he's kind of really one to watch.
Well, if you don't know, now you know. Isn't that what the lad says? Caoilte, Dom Nokus defeated Maximilian Flynn via second round TKO, and you kind of alluded to, we didn't get the stream here, but thanks to Omar, he did put up the replay on his Instagram. But look at that. Look, we're recording this a little bit earlier, obviously, but that will be now available to watch on UFC Fight Pass if you go on there and check that out if anybody does want to watch it back. But fantastic namesake here, I want to say. First of all, Dom Nokus versus Maximilian Flynn, 2 fantastic names, but even more so of a fantastic performance from Dominic as well. Went out there, gets the second round TKO, and we spoke with Dom here. We've always talked up Dom, and us talking up Dom is totally justified. Caoilte, he is a beast. He's got serious power, serious composure, killer instinct. He's ticking off a lot of boxes in his mixed martial arts professional career.
Yeah, his resume for a lad who is 3-0 is like exceptional, especially at his age. And he's doing it across different weight classes. Like, we've been singing his praise for a while, and he deserves it. Like, the way he's going out here, taking these fights against lads who are not, they're no slouches by any means. His last fight against Kevin Ends, a weight class above, I believe, and your man was undefeated, BJJ black belt, knocks him out in the first round, and now goes out here, tough fight against another undefeated lad. This one was at a catch weight, so 73.5 kg. From what we've seen, looks really comfortable in there. He's landing strikes like no tomorrow from that clip, and really nice shots as well. Drops him, and he's just vicious from what we've seen him so far. And yeah, look, he's a top prospect. He's so young as well. Like, I imagine he's probably a natural featherweight for the professional ranks, and he's happily going out there and beating lads at whatever weight he can get a fight at now. So, he's booked there again soon. I think is is it? I don't know where that
3
show is
weeks
at.
time in Caoilte MMA, I think it is. It's,
Germany, is it?
Yeah, it's Caoilte MMA 5, so it's in Germany. It's in Braunschweig, Germany.
He'll be heading over to fuck around with some more German traffic lights, I'd assume, over there in another
Finger
country.
traffic lights.
Well, Andy, you know, we were chatting. Obviously, you know, Dom is a guy that excites me tremendously. You know, when you want to pinpoint what gets you excited about it is the cool and calmness, the composure, the power that he possesses. When he landed that shot, you know, that hurt Flynn in this fight, you know, there was no mad rushing, there was no panicking, there was no wailing the punches. You know, what he did is he closed the distance. He got off another 1, 2, 3, which put Flynn down, and then finished off on the mount with some ground and pound and some elbows. It's like, you know, very, very impressive to see that from a young man very early in his career, that, you know, you have that level of composure, because, you know, you can lose the head. If you hurt someone, sometimes you can surprise yourself. You know, sometimes you can kind of lose the run of yourself, where we've seen guys hurt other people. They go for the finish. They're just winging punches and they'll tire themselves out, but that was not the case at the finish sequence in Dom's fight here. And you know, that, why am I excited? Watching shit like that gets me really excited to see, you know, how well schooled he is so early in his career, and you know, that's only going to get better as he progresses.
Yeah, like he's a guy who, like, he seems very assured in himself, and like you can be that way outside the cage. Like, we've had him on here, and I remember like when he had his amateur debut, like I met him that night, and he was like, I think he was like due to do his leave insert a few weeks later, and I remember kind of meeting him and being like, this lad just seems very, very like confident, but kind of like this quiet confidence where like he's not braggadocious. He knows something that you don't, and you can be that way outside the cage. But when you look like that, when you're fighting and you're composed, and you're kind of like, not like you're out for a walk in the park, but you're just kind of, you know, you have the answer. It's like you have the answer. And of course, he's only early in his career, and we, you know, there'll be much, much tougher tests along the way. But he looks great, and he looks very, very, very powerful. He picks his shots really well. He's pinpointing, and as you said, when he smells blood, when he smells the finish, he knows exactly what to do, and it's every shot is meaningful, and every shot is decisive, bringing him towards the end of the fight. And that was, you know, again, well, I'll watch it tomorrow. We'll probably jump on here and chat a little bit more, but he looked great. And like, the leading into this fight, Maximilian Flynn is training in Dubai, and I was chatting with John Mitchell, I think trains with him, and Brian Draper reached out to me as well, being like, this guy is like, they've trained with him, like he's very, very good. Now he's 3-0 coming into this. I would say Dom is definitely the hardest fight that he's had so far, looking at those 3 wins. But you know, when you have lads who are really bigging someone up, you know, it's not just going to be a cakewalk. So yeah, good win for Dom Nokus, and he's back out in 3 weeks again, and I'm told that they intend to go through with that. So yeah, we'll see him in a few weeks again in Germany this time.
Love it, yeah. All right, boys, let's talk some PFL Europe action. We had a couple in action last weekend. Daniele, Valentina, Scatizzi were in action, along with Matis Zarahovs. But Andrea Spinder weighed in as well as a backup for the welterweight division, which is great to see. You know, unfortunate for him that he couldn't fight. You'd beg to think, would you not get somebody else in, fucking have them weigh in, and let Andreas kind of not make use of the weigh in? But nonetheless, it's good that his foot is in the door there, and hopefully he gets a fight later on in the year. But let's talk Matis first. Caoilte, fantastic win. A bit of a heated contest. There's a bit of pushing and shoving and talking there, and on the weigh-ins and the face-offs and everything. But it was Matis that got the job done, winning by rear naked choke, and it was a great win overall for him, kind of getting back into the win column.
It was, yeah, and like, look, there was he didn't have it all his way either. He got tested in there from Hislop. Hislop landed some very nice shots, especially in that first round, and then second round, Matisse switched it up a little bit. He managed to get to the ground. And he's relentless when he gets to the mat, vicious, and he really wrapped that rear naked choke up nice and tight, and yeah, forced submission. Really good win for him, and look, hopefully gives him an opportunity in a big fight next. I know he was looking at that McGrillen fight again, you know.
Yeah, that would be a serious one as well. And that would
What
be
a
real
fight that was.
That was ridiculous.
I mean, I know we're Irish MMA, but we got to talk about that.
You have to acknowledge
That was
a fight like
fucking
that.
Unbelievable.
You have to acknowledge a fight like that. It was insane. But let's talk about the Scatizis, Daniele and Valentina. Daniele lost to Jakub Kazuba, and the Jakub Kazuba on a one-man mission to wreck Irish MMA prospects' dreams. He got the job done here. It was close. I think Daniele, he did what we were hoping that you would do, get in kind of, I think what you have to do against a guy like Jakub Kazuba. I think Dylan Tuke was another guy who kind of tried to get in, but it's tough to do it. Kazuba's a good, strong guy in that kind of position, good in the clinch, got off a couple of good shots and deserved the win overall, really, didn't he?
Yeah, like he was just more effective. Like I thought that Daniele did a great job, as you said, of kind of playing him at his own game. Like when we're familiar with Kazuba now because he's fought Dylan Tuke, he's fought John Mitchell, and he uses his frame, he uses his strength, and he uses his pressure very, very well. And Daniele kind of flipped the script on him, where he was the one, pushing him up against the cage. He was the one grinding on him. He was the one offensively grappling. But it was just Kazuba was landing more damage in the grappling exchanges, in the clinch positions, and I thought that he, the uppercuts were working well from. He was just landing more, and while I think that Scatizzi did a good job, it was it was ultimately a clean enough win, I guess, for Kazuba in the end, despite the success in the grappling and the pressure, and it's a scoring criteria at the end of the day. Like that was kind of a prime example of it. Of this is what is effective in winning rounds, and this is what's not. So unfortunate for Daniele. I think that a lot of fighters, especially when we talk about Irish fighters, when we know that Dylan Tuke is knocking around, we know John Mitchell as well. If it's going to be maybe some of the similar lads in the season next year, we've got Kazuba and Conor Hughes in the final. I think a lot of people will look at a fight like that and think, I fancy my chances, or there's routes to victory here against a guy like this. So it's exciting. I think this PFL Europe season is quite interesting for Irish fighters and UK fighters. I like what they're doing. I like the continuity of it. So yeah, it's good to see kind of these repeat fighters year on year and be able to say, okay, well, where can the Irish fighters stack up against them? So fair play to Kazuba on obviously winning this one, and he moves on to face Conor Hughes, a guy who Dylan Tuke beat last season. So it's going to be interesting to see how this figures out.
Mentioning Dylan Tuke, it's a pity he didn't get instilled into this card, to be honest. Look, it's obviously fighting out of higher level. I know he spoke with us the last time. He really wanted to be on this card. Now, we got the chance to make the walk with Stevie Ray, yeah. And yeah, I mean, I know that meant a lot to him too. He was on Instagram, but geez, I think it's a shame that he wasn't on this card. I think, I don't know what's going on. Maybe we could have Dylan on again to maybe explain his current situation, but I felt a bit of a miss from PFL not having him on that card, and tough for him to be kind of going in looking at a guy like Conor Hughes, who's an excellent fighter too, in the final, where Dylan had beaten once before as well, and obviously came close. He had some success against Kazuba before he got beaten as well. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of touch on that a little bit. Caoilte, Valentina Scatizzi came up against one of the UK's brightest prospects in Chanel Dyer, and ran her close as well. Obviously, did kind of the same as her brother and kind of, made it a dirty, gritty fight. But in the end, I think Chanel kind of shunned through and deserved to get the nod off the judges' scorecard, and what was a split decision.
Yeah, I'd agree with what you said there about the decision. I did have it scored for Chanel, but Scatizzi approached this fight, and probably it was a similar type of stylistic matchup she was facing that she would have had in the tournament last time when she came up against Dakota Cheva. So, she managed to cut into the distance well, get her punches off, make it a dirty, gritty fight, and my God, is she tough. She ate some big knees, just a chin of steel, and really, that's probably the hardest fight Chanel Dyer's had as a pro, but by a mile, I'd say. She actually, at one point, she landed some good shots. One was an overhander hook she landed, and she had Chanel Dyer shooting for a takedown. So fair. You know what? Fair play. It was a really good fight. You might feel that she could have been hard done by a decision, but I don't know. I would have had it for Chanel Dyer to win that fight, and as she did. But yeah, brilliant fight. Hopefully, she sticks around the PFL ranks.
100%. Any final thoughts, PFL, Andy, before we move over to Oktagon?
Well, more so just on Valentina is that, like, I think that this experience, like, she's come against really, really very just incredibly skillful fighters in both Dakota Ditcheva last year and Chanel Dyer this year. And like Chanel coming into this had already had 16 MMA fights. I think Dakota was something like she's had about 15 or so herself, I think, heading into that one. So, you know, heading into this PFL run for Valentina, she'd had 4 MMA fights total, you know, and then she's obviously fought in last season and now this season. So I think this will stand to her in time. And obviously she's coming up against really, really difficult competition here, which is, it's tough. It's tough to win these fights. But yeah, I thought overall, I like the tournament format, the European tournament format. I really, really like in PFL. I hope that they keep doing it. And I like, as I said, the continuity, keep getting these fighters involved, get a load of Irish, get a load of English and beyond, and keep getting them. And there's probably no Russian. Like, I remember last year we were like, why is Kazuba not in this worldwide tournament? And yeah, there's an argument to be made for certain fighters going into that. But I kind of like the like, oh, you know, he got him last year, let's see who wins this year. I kind of like that to an extent. So I like what they're doing. And yeah, as I said, that fucking McGrillen versus Dean Garnett fight, Dan Hardy, any criticism I've ever had about PFL or anything, I take it all back for that fight. My God, give us that every weekend.
Indeed, yeah. I mean, probably a conversation for another day rather than getting into it right now. But yeah, there's a couple of names that stand out to me that I'd love to see in the tournament next year. And I think the one that stands on top of the most of them is Dara Kelly. I think he gets into that lightweight tournament. I think he does very, very well with some of the level of competition that's already in there. I think what I would provide for Dara is, you know, the right tests at the right time and building himself up for that six-figure contract as well, or the six-figure cash prize is what I should say. But I digress. We'll definitely maybe kind of break that down a little bit more on a future podcast. I want to talk about Oktagon 62. It's Cork versus Tipperary Tash. Pavel Langer goes in there to take on Will Fleury in what is a title eliminator in the light heavyweight division in Oktagon, taking place in Frankfurt in the big arena, the big stadium. It's not even an arena, it's a stadium. I think it was 62,000 people, I think, is going to be live in attendance. It's a massive, massive opportunity for Will Fleury here to kind of stake his claim at the light heavyweight championship in Oktagon. Andy, it's been something that he's been wanting and hoping to achieve over the last year. He has one foot in the door, per se, in terms of getting that opportunity. He has to go out there and do the business against Pavel Langer. That fight is on October 12th. It will take place before our next episode, so obviously we'll break down that fight in full. But looking ahead to it, pretty exciting for Will to get this opportunity on a huge big stage. I mean, you train your life, you make the dedication, and you hope for opportunities like this. And you know, the only thing that would make this bigger if it was a title fight, but I think the onus that you can take from it is that if he wins, he's almost guaranteed getting that crack at the light heavyweight championship, and it's very exciting times.
I think this is this could be a real moment for Will Fleury to kind of reestablish himself in front of people's faces, and you know, as like, oh shit, I'm about to do something kind of big here, because obviously he was, you know, he was floating around between Bellator and then obviously was it UAE Warriors and a few different places, and he never really found his kind of continuity. And of course he went into PFL and there was this momentum behind him, and then he had the drug test failure, so that was kind of, you know, that was stopped, and now he's starting to reestablish himself in Oktagon, but they haven't been these big moments yet. But for any fighter, and especially for an Irish fighter, to go out and fight in front of, you know, tens of thousands of people in a stadium, the atmosphere is going to be absolutely insane. And as you said, he's in a title eliminator, so if he goes out here, and I think he could easily do it, and if he goes out here, gets let's say a stoppage over Langer, and like, that's huge. Like, to have that moment in front of that raucous kind of Eastern European crowd, and then be like, and then maybe they'll have a face off or something in the cage. It'll be like, oh shit, Will Fleury's doing something over here, and it's meaningful, and there's a spotlight on it, and I think it will be a nice next chapter for him. Like, this would be the real next chapter in his career after, obviously, you know, it going askew off the back of PFL.
100%, yeah, very well said, Andy. And Caoilte, you know, I mean, listening, Will was on with Sean ahead of this fight as well, and they spoke about a lot of things as well. But one thing that did stick out from that conversation is Will's want to kind of take this opportunity and maybe bring a show back to Ireland. Maybe we'll see an Oktagon show back in Ireland. I mean, it's going to be hard match, 60-something thousand people in a stadium, but at least, if you had a title fight there, or if he went on and won the title and brought that back to Ireland, I mean, that's good for the Irish scene as well. It might create some more opportunities for up and coming fighters too. That's kind of part one of what I was going to pull you in for. But part two, similar enough to Andy, I'm kind of feeling that Will does have the ability to get the job done here. And, it's not going to be always, and it never is plain sailing when you get in there, but he definitely has the overall skill set to go out there and take on and win a fight against a guy like Pavel Langer.
Yeah, 100%. Like how he looked in his Oktagon debut was, he probably looked like one of the best guy in the division going off that performance. It was so dominant. He looked outstanding, and I do feel like he could go on and be massive in this organization. I can see him doing an Oktagon. I can only compare to what Phil de Vries has done in KSW, where you take ownership of a division and you're the outsider, I guess, in a way, like Phil de Vries is in KSW, and you build this legacy, it gets opportunities for other fighters, and could potentially bring a show back to Ireland. And I feel like he has all the potential to do that. And it's massive, and being able to compete in that's 62,000 seaters, just like that's insanity. So it shows that Oktagon have put a lot of faith in him as well. It's that they they want to put him up there with some of their best talent in at their biggest show of the year.
100%. October 12th, Oktagon in Frankfurt. Really excited for that one. All right, Elite FC took place in Cork last weekend as well. We had a bunch of action that taken place. Lost a couple of fights along the way, but the main event was Brian Manning versus Jordan Heath. We had Brian on the last time. Just before we get into the fights that did happen, we lost a couple of fights on this card, a couple of professional fights, unfortunately. What's the update on that?
You're on mute there.
Come on, amateur move. Amateur move.
Yeah.
67 in, man. 67 in.
That's 2 seconds of people's lives they'll never get back.
That's 2 seconds. They don't have to be listening to me. Look, as I was saying when I was on mute, we lost two really good pro fights. Avenue Farris was supposed to be returning, and it was Jack McGuire as well supposed to be returning, and I believe there was an opponent pulling out, another one pulling out. I think was it the day of, 2 days before, like some ridiculous circumstance for McGuire. Like that's it's sickening, but that's what happens when guys are being flown in. We've seen it before. Like it's part of me isn't surprised that flying in guys from another country that you don't know if they're going to be reliable. You're not sure if they have everything up to date. It's unfortunate part of the game. That's how it is. But yeah, two really big fights lost. But the card was still good overall. I really enjoyed it,
But what were some of the standout moments? Obviously, Brian took home the first round TKO win over Jordan Heath in the main event. There seemed to be a good buzz in the arena watching the event back, and that kind of set the crowd on a frenzy. A lot of shit talk before that fight, and Brian always delivering entertaining kind of interviews, walkouts. He produced another entertaining fight here as well, getting the first round knockout, Caoilte.
He did, yeah, with that walkout with the chainsaw and everything, and he's an entertainer at the end of the day, and he gets people on their seats, and he gets people off their seats. He's great ticket seller down Cork, and a great man for the walkouts and just getting people excited in the build up and everything like that as well. In terms of the fight, look, Jordan Heath, fair play to him, he came in, he was throwing some low kicks. Jordan Heath could not get going, and Brian Manning looked, he looked like a man ready to kill inside there. He was just relentless. He came in, that big stiff jab. I don't think Jordan Heath was really at Brian Manning's level at all, to be very honest. And we got to see that in the fight. Brian Manning looked much bigger, and it was it was a solid performance for his pro debut. That's, he's off the mark now. I imagine he's probably going to be going back out there again soon, maybe on that next elite show that they've planned. But overall, look, very good debut for him as a pro.
Yeah, hearing on the grapevine, there is obviously they've announced that there is another show as well, and hearing that could be towards the end of the year as well. It'd be a perfect slot, Andy, for Brian stepping back in there again. I mean, the market is down there for him. It looks like there was a good crowd reaction to the finish as well.
I like when fighters start to build like just a following and a bit of a cult kind of behind them. I think that makes a lot of sense what you're saying there, to build it around around Brian in Cork and get some atmosphere going there, and then maybe you stick him on a show and you have a big traveling support. Then I think that he's a fighter who's building himself very, very well, and I think that would make a lot of sense here. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Caoilte, light heavyweight title on the line in the co-main event. Sam Driver defeated Coyote O'Brien via rear naked choke in the second round. What were your thoughts on that win?
Yeah, Sam Driver looked brilliant. The first round, not much really happened in the first round. I think they're both trying to it's more feel now process. I think Sam wanted to strike a little bit more and show off that. Second round, then switch things up. Big takedown, got into mount, and then he was just raining down punches until he finally got the back and got the choke. So, really impressive performance from him. He teased that. Great post-fight interview too with Paul Brown. He was teasing that when he could go in the 4 rounds gloves, difficulty getting fights, what's next, and great character overall. I really enjoyed.
Do you think he's ready? You think he's ready to make that move now? Yeah, I think so.
I'm not too sure. Maybe. He's only 6 fights in.
Yeah.
So, but then again, a lot of lads are jumping to the pro ranks now, so maybe he did. It's
not
look
easy
very
when
good.
you get to the heavier weights too. Like when you're talking about light heavyweight and you're talking about heavyweight, it's not easy kind of get that fresh string of opponents as well. But maybe there's 1 or 2 left there. I mean, with the card, you'd imagine maybe he would kind of defend that title on the card later on in the year as well. Maybe
that's it. Yeah, no, but overall, very good win from him.
Take us through the rest of the card there to the best of your ability. Obviously, we had another title fight between Evan Horgan and Daniel Camphor as well. And any other standout performances that you've seen on the card?
Yeah, it was very good. That was a very good win for Evan Horgan. Very close fight. And he actually ended up squaring off with Youssef Oktagon. I really apologize for butchering that name. That's what we're known for.
I think it's Oktagon. That's what they were saying anyway on the broadcast.
Perfect, Oktagon. And they squared off afterwards, so it looks like that fight's going to happen next. I'd love to see it. Absolutely brilliant. The 2 boys had split decision wins the night and looked good. Outside that, there was a lot of they flew in a lot of fighters to this card. So Louise Brady, who had an extraordinary rise through the IMAF ranks as a youth, has looked really, really good as an amateur now since going to kind of the full amateur rule set. She dominated that, Patricia Livramento, and just kind of continued that rise that she's been on. Another really hyped up amateur has been Jodie McCarthy ever since she's been young. She's renowned for competing in Muay Thai, all sorts of disciplines, but primarily Muay Thai since she was young.
She had a big social media following, right? Where
Dana White
was a tiny little girl just beating the shit out of people.
yeah. I think Dana White was did he react?
Yeah, there was something with Dana, definitely.
Yeah, so she's been known for years, massive following, big pop from her for her from the crowd, and I do feel for her a little bit because her opponent did not want to engage, and the one time I say it, the small cage would really have suited her in this one because the opponent did not want to engage. She was on the back foot. Using that big cage that they use for Premier, it was used this event as well. And
could be having her fighting in a phone box like Norma Park now soon.
Knees and elbows, everything. But no, look, so she did get the win, straightforward win for her. So it'll be interesting to see how she progresses next. Johnny Duggan, Paul Nolan, fair play to him. He stepped up on short notice, take on Johnny Duggan, who lost an opponent at the last minute. Bit of a different performance from Johnny in this one. We got to see a bit more of his grappling. He looked quite good in there, and it was, it was a very good fight. He looked very good. Paul Nolan, fair play, as I said, he stepped in short notice and saved that fight. And one I have to mention, this guy Taylor Heffernan, Jesus lads, talk about personality. This guy really, he came out. He won his fight with these. He's got a kickboxing background, I believe, and he came out looking for titles, everything. First fight, and he was asking Paul Brown, was that not entertaining or something?
Call your shots. I love it.
Absolutely brilliant, lads. I love it. The personality, he's and he looks good. He looks strong. He's much better than the lad who was in front of him. That was only his first fight. Looks like one to watch.
That's mad to hear that he's a kickboxing background because he absolutely destroyed him with a slam takedown like that.
Yeah.
I think that's what did the damage to. But he obviously got the TKO after, but like, fucking smashed him down with that takedown.
Yeah, no, he looked brilliant. And then look, two honorable mentions, I think, there for like fight of the night. Emily Badnaev and Lisa Murta put on a fantastic fantastic fight. It was a great win for Emily. She returned, I think, his first fight since 2018. So, potential fight of the night one right there. And a good contender for that was Luka Nadirashvili, Georgian fighter who competed against Limerick's own David Bork. Another brilliant fight. It's a toss-up between two of them for fight of the night. But overall, look, it was a good card.
Go on, Caoilte, give us it. Which one was it between the two, in your opinion? Fight of the night.
I'll give it to Lisa Murta and Emily Badmaev.
Love it.
Great fight between them.
Congratulations, you've just won €50 each from Caoilte to Barra for fight of the night. Fair play to Caoilte. If you see him at an event, you can redeem it.
Please send invoices to Andy Stevenson.
Well, luckily it's not from Andy Stevenson anyway, because it probably would have got it in 2027, given the fact that he holds on to prizes for so long and doesn't give them out.
You walked into that one now, Andy.
Is your internet going?
Yeah, indeed. Look, great to see Elite FC going on down in Cork. Look, the need for regional shows in the Republic is there's a big need for it, and we mentioned them using the Premier MMA cage. Unfortunately, the Premier FC cage was used in EFC, but it won't be used in November for their show. That show has been called off. Logistical reasons or logistical issues have been cited for that as well. So I mean, look, we talked about it. It's always going to be difficult with all the shows that were happening on November 2nd anyway. So I mean, yeah, it's unfortunate that they can't put on the show, but hopefully we'll see them back soon enough. Fight announcements that have been announced for a show that is going on in November. That's Celtic Gladiator Jack Core versus Michael McCoy, and he is frothing at them out here in this Irish on Irish contest here. Sean Kelly makes his pro debut versus Jordan Heat at Chaos 24. Jamie McGarty and Peter Halpenny, they came to blows at the Canmore's presser, or did they? Andy questions. I know you have your.
I don't know.
The tinfoil hat is out.
No. So what did they say in rest? I started watching now. No spoilers. I've been watching the.
I was wondering if you were coming out with the energy today. You were watching the Vince McMahon. I watched it myself. You're cutting promos at the start of the podcast. You're cutting promos halfway through. It was like real.
What you talking about, brother?
I'll tell you something. That Vince McMahon documentary is savage. I started it on Wednesday. I finished it last night. It's unbelievable. Definitely check it out. But I wanted to say it. I was like, no, it couldn't be. And then when you brought it up, it's like you're bringing that fucking WWE kind of promotional excitement into this podcast this week. It all makes sense now.
Well, listen, number one, it's actually called Cage Gladiator. I put it wrong in the document notes. That's what we do when we record an episode. We have a document, and I put it in incorrectly. So sorry, Danny Core. It's Cage Gladiator.
There was a Celtic Gladiator, wasn't
there? There definitely was a Celtic Gladiator. But anyway, this Clan Wars thing, right? So they did a press conference. I don't know if there's any press there, but they did a press conference, and they squared them off. And Jamie McGarty and Peter Halpenny came to blows. Now, we sent it in the WhatsApp group. We're like, whoa, look at this. This is mad. I put it up being like, I don't like this at amateur because I don't really.
Can I ask you that? I'm going to call you up on that one now. I'm going to call you up on that one.
Yeah.
Why don't you like it at amateur? Would you like to see it at pro instead? Like, I mean, the two boys are going to go in and throw slaps anyway. Like, emotions can get high. Why would you say? Would you like to just not like to see that in general, or is it just like, I'm curious.
Well, if it's, I guess this kind of leads into the next thing. If it's real, I like it. As in, like, I've no problem with it, but I'm just like, is it necessary? Then again, I'm like, okay, well, these are fighters going in, so like maybe I'm just wrong. I think when you're selling, I just don't think you need to sell fights at amateur, but maybe I'm completely missing the mark here, considering we talk about growing Irish MMA. So maybe I'm just wrong. But the main thing I want to talk about, I put it up and I was like, I am a sucker, because like as soon as I saw that, I was like, I want to watch this fight. Like, I need to see this fight now. So they had me hooked regardless. So fair play, Clan Wars. But multiple people messaged me. I won't reveal their names. I wouldn't dox them like that. But one of them may have been a manager who sounds like Schmosh Mogarty. But there was many others. Many others were like, "Is it real? Is it real?" And now I've watched it like 3 or 4 or 5 times in slow motion, and I actually don't think it's real. I think it's a work, as they say in the biz. And I don't know. There's a lot of comments like they're. It seems coordinated. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe
you're saying that they broke kayfabe off camera.
We have 2 promotions fighting or going on the same night. We have Clan Wars and we've got Cage Conflict, and there's a rivalry there, and they're looking for the spotlight. And tell you what, they've just gotten it. They've just gotten it. Clan Wars have just gotten it. So now Cage Conflict are going to have to stage something. I don't know. Maybe it's real. Maybe it's real. But I've flipped. It's fake. It's pro wrestling. It's fake.
Look into it, bro. Look into it. But yeah, I don't know. Look at what one.
I want to see the bruise. I want to see the bruise. I don't know.
They've been going back and forth on the comment section for God knows how long as well. So who knows? Maybe Andy. I don't know. I do love a good conspiracy every now and again, but I think we'll need to find. We'll need to consult some conspiracy experts on this one, I feel.
I mean, either way,
that's it. We're going to bring in Alex Jones as a guest on the next episode of the Old Triangle to break down.
We have an Irish Alex Jones.
Irish MMA. We have about fucking 17,000 of them.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Can we just have a moment for whoever that was in the clip of the 2 lads that Andy think is a work? At the very end, whoever runs across in a kilt.
Billy Sutherland.
That was I was just like, what is going on here? It just makes it even more.
Well, they hit the floor anyway, given what
the reaction was very timid as well. They were like, "Oh no, lads, don't do that." But I don't know. Maybe listen. I don't fight. I don't know.
Andy has the skeptical hippo eyes right there, but
I just have multiple and it was fighters as well. Multiple fighters. I protect the fighters. I don't. Yeah,
I do see what you mean.
Paul Fogarty
multiple fighters saying I call bullshit. But I thought it was real at first, so maybe it is real.
Well, the mass majority might not look into it with as the level of skepticism as you, Andy. And that one thing is
a 30-minute breakdown of the video next week.
Yeah. Slow it down. But that wraps us up for episode 67 of the Owl Triangle. Thanks to everyone for listening. Thanks to Max Lally for joining us. We'll be back in another 2 weeks to break down all the action that has taken place from then until now. And all is left for us to do from now until then, I should have said. But all of that is left for us to do is for Caoilte to see us out.
Gura míle maith agaibh agus slán go fóill.